Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome into the My Tribe podcast. This one is we're going to cover the topic of a big fish in a little pond. You ever been a big fish in a little pond? Or have you ever been a little fish in a big pond? What is it that you prefer? I want to explore different perspectives of being a big fish in a little pond. A lot of this is based in this amazing book that I'm reading, David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And we're going to get into the David and Goliath a little bit later. But actually, at the backside, look at this big fish and little fish. So, again, you can be a little fish swimming around, just another number in a big pond, or you could be a big fish in a little pond. And in this book, it goes into a lot of the, unique perspectives of being a big fish and actually being an outsider and how that may being the David of the situation and how that may be advantageous. So I know I've talked about this in a past episode about how, sometimes using your differences and how about being the David and having to get creative in certain ways, being that underdog forced you to be more creative. And with that, this goes down, it starts talking about like the Impressionists in early France in like 1864 or something of that nature. And the Impressionists were not the Impressionists. They were just they were four, five, six dudes and girls that would just like hang out on a corner, smoke and paint and drink and smoke and drink and paint. And there was this prestigious art show named the Salon. And if your art got into the Salon, it was deemed justified. It was deemed art. It was deemed that you've made it. And it was confusing because even though you made it into the Salon, it wasn't a guarantee that your art was going to get approved or sold, like not approved by the public or sold to somebody individually. So what happens is that, the way they were doing the salon, and I could see this like as being a big fish, as being not as being a big pond, and how people get carried away with greed and so on and so forth um, is that they would put paintings all the way from the floor all the way up to the top. And if there was something that they thought was specific and unique and amazing to that art show, they'd put it at eye line. So that was like the prime level, but there was artwork from the top all the way to the bottom. I think there was about 10-foot ceilings. So if it was at the top, you probably wouldn't have even been seen. So as they're talking about this story, they're talking about how, the Impressionists, they grew up in a world of art where everything had to be so unique. Everything had to be so lifelike, not unique, but so lifelike and so perfect. When you're drawing it, it should be no pick different from what you're seeing and from what is being what your artwork is. And they wanted to take a spin on that. They wanted to do things a little differently. And that's why I think that they separated themselves. They set themselves apart in their uniqueness. Going back to what makes you unique makes you different. And in doing that, they were doing that and they were getting disapproved. They weren't getting admitted to the salon and again they weren't. So you know what? We're gonna pack up. We're gonna do our own. So they rented a room in a high, probably in like a six-story walk up. We had to get all the way to the top. And mind you, back then there were no elevators. It was not easy to get there. And they hustled and bustled and got the word out. And about 3,500 people showed up. And throughout their whole month of their art showcase, essentially. And that room ended up holding the most that actually ended up, if you were to value it out from the beginning of time, that was the most valuable art showcasing in the entire world, with the paintings in that room that they hosted it in worth over billions of dollars. not millions, billions of dollars. So that just goes to show you, like, hey, doing your own thing sometimes ain't such a bad idea. They created their own pond. They said, you know what? Instead of trying to be a small fish in this big pond, we're going to be a big fish in our own pond. Ooh, I like that. I like that. I like that. Now, this next point, I know this was a very personal point for me. This was something that, it goes this it goes on to talk about a an individual named Caroline Sachs who grew up, looking at bugs, and she was a nerd and she wanted to, study science and all of these things. And she did well in school, but the only thing she really cared about and did well in was science. So she had this identification of, I'm a science girl. I'm somebody that does well at science. And, when it came down to picking colleges, she went and toured the whole gambit of colleges. She went here, there, and everywhere and ranked them first to last of what I think the best college was, and ended up being Brown University. She went there and she was nervous because that's an Ivy League school. She thought everybody was going to be smarter than her. And the minute she walked in there, she got there freshman year, was like, all right, listen, this ain't that big of a deal. This is all good. Everybody else is just as lost and getting introduced to drinking and partying as me. And that's just what it is. That's college freshman year. And then, as the time went on, and then she realized that, like, okay, this is challenging, but it's not something I can't handle. Then chemistry came along and she struggled. And no matter what she did, she couldn't memorize the molecules and what forms what to get to what and so on and so forth, because some people's brains are just wired that way. Some people's are, some people's aren't. And then she went to her professor, like, hey, like, what's the deal, like, I need help here. And he's like, listen, just drop it, take it again next semester when you're refocused. I think you might be taking too many classes, doing much new stuff. So she does that, and went back next semester, same struggle. She's doing it, struggling, struggling, struggling. And she's realizing, she's looking left and looking right in the classroom as the teacher's asking questions and the hands are flying up. And I know I found myself in that position. I know I struggled heavily in school with that. Yeah, I went to St. Ignatius of Loyola Grammar School. Like, it was one of the most, it was probably one of the most competitive grammar schools. They call them grammar schools in New York City. This is what they are. One of the most competitive grammar schools in New York City. And that was such a hard time for me because of that comparison, of that, when I looked left and looked right, all the other kids were getting it and I wasn't. That was a real struggle for me. And I, it wasn't the fact that it was hard to comprehend the stuff, it was the fact that I felt like I was always falling behind. It was an exhaustion of anxiety of, how are they getting it and I'm not? How are they getting it and I'm not? You know what? Fuck it, I'm just gonna shut it down. I'm just not gonna do it. If I don't do it, then I'll just be dumb or something. I don't know. This isn't for me. I like whatever. I'll just accept whatever fate, because trying to carry the weight of this right now is way too exhausting. And I'm talking, that's like third, fourth grade version of me right there. Struggling with the reading comprehension, with all of it, A to Z, you call it. I was struggling so hard. I never considered myself a school person. So Caroline, I definitely feel you there. So, going back to that, I know my story, I've been so blessed that I was going to an amazing, like, a prestigious grammar school. I was put there by my parents. Say hi, oh no. Because my parents worked hard. They got me there. And I'm blessed. But that was not the place for me. That was not the place where I was going to succeed. Um, I was there, I had to get through, and it taught me how to manage a ton of stress when things are not going your way. Then I eventually went to Mount St. Michael in the Bronx, which was such a blessing because that academic weight or demand was dialed down in a such a positive way, and the things that actually mattered in life I got to really learn and I got to do because I wasn't overwhelmed with memorization. These schools are just boxes of memorization. And I mean, I almost every day of high school, I had 12-hour days. I get up at like 5:30, be on the bus by 6, and we get up to school about 8. School starts at 8:30. Boom, you go through a whole day of school, like 2:33, you get out, practice started, whether it was football, hockey, or lacrosse. Those I played sports year round up in college, in high school, and practice would go from 3:30, 4 to about 5:30. I get on the bus at 6. I wouldn't get home till about 7:30, 8 o'clock. There wasn't room for distractions, room to like you had like walk home and get caught up in some stupid stuff that me and my friends were doing. There wasn't room for anything but self-improvement and hard work. Like we would do homework on the bus going to school. We would do homework on the vans coming home in the sports bus. And it was such a blessing because the little amount of time that I had at the end of my day, if I didn't do my homework on the bus, I had to get it done. Otherwise, it wasn't going to get done. So putting myself in that position of like, well, I'm going to the school because I want to play the sports that they have. And that taught me the essence of hard work. It was an all boys school. I had nothing to focus on but my I would say it was for me. I'm trying to see if I valued athletics over school. Um, and it probably was. It was probably like a 60-40. And when I saw other players getting benched or kicked off the team for academics, I was like, oh no, you're not taking this away from me. I'm going to go and do what I got to do in school because this is so amazing for me. So I use the motivation and love for sports to to do well in school so sports wouldn't be taken away from me. And it's amazing how much of that was just an intrinsic motivator of like, well, yeah, this school might be tough. This well, again, the school wasn't that tough. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say that the school was dramatically tough. But again, I think that that school taught me so much about empathy, about acceptance, about seeing different ways of life that I truly, truly, and most of all, brotherhood. It was an all boys school, and not having women in our life at that age was probably the biggest blessing I could have given myself. Because I remember in grammar school, it's like seventh, eighth grade. That's when girls start becoming like a thing. And I distinctly remember like, nah, man, I really I'm obsessed with these girls. And being in high school when the testosterone is blasting through the roof and you don't have that option, when you look left and look right and just see other dudes like either struggling doing work, whatever, or he's getting stronger in the weight room than me, or this guy's getting higher test grades. Nah, I didn't really care much about that, but it was such a it turned into a healthy competition for me that I truly believe it was if I build and you build, we both build and get better. And it wasn't one pinning against another. It was like we as brothers are gonna grow and get better. Say hi to Ocho. He's sitting here with me. Hello, buddy. And to me, that was such a blessing. Like even now, I'll see myself as I don't know, doing X, Y, or Z, and it's it's me, a guy, and like a girl or two girls or one attractive girl, and it's like I find myself almost subconsciously ranking myself against this guy, how I'm doing, what I'm doing, how am I conducting myself, and how is it that I'm um, managing this social situation. And yeah, I don't think I'm the only person that does that. I think men do that on a very regular basis when women are introduced, like in the room. When it's just dudes, it's like, yo, like we're just dudes. Let's just hang out. It's not like oh God, I gotta sit up straight. I gotta worry about what I say or da 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 da. And it's not even that. It's more of just like there's such a different dynamic when that energy of a female comes, an attractive female comes into a room of suitable single men. There's a switch that gets flipped, and it's wild. It's pretty wild. But again, didn't have that, and it was such a blessing that I was able to be. That was a pretty big pond of a high school that I went to, and I mean, when I look back at it, yeah, we were. It was 80% Black and Hispanic, and I was like the honestly like 15% white. Like we had a white table that we would just like it's just us. Everywhere, everybody else was all this, that, it was all baseball team, all, gang members over here, people over there. It was just like it was an unbelievable experience of being exposed to different cultures in such a beautiful way that I think it truly rounded me to be a much more beneficial human being, as if I would have just went to another like white high school with girls and had this like had this I don't know, movie or picture perfect high school experience. Like we had prom, but it wasn't prom. It was more of like dudes bringing a girl, but it was the dudes celebrating like, yo, we made it. And that to me was so profound and so beautiful. And the brotherhood, I'll never forget. I'll never forget some of the relationships that I've had in that school. I'll never forget the amazing wins, the championships that we got to win, and the tough losses that we found ourselves getting through together. That's something I'll truly never forget at Mount St. Michael. And I would dearly recommend any young man to go to an all boys high school. I would dearly recommend anyone in the tri-state area to send their kids to Mount St. Michael, because that brotherhood, that that energy of support and community and building is is something that is unmatched. And that's something I know I'm going to be looking for when I'm considering schools for my children. And it's a very, very, very beautiful and powerful experience that I got to have. Getting back to the main topic of being a big fish in a little pond, this concept was so relative to me in so many aspects of my life. Even after high school, in college, I was considering different schools. I mean, I was a pretty good lacrosse player, and I could have been a third stringer on a D2 or D1 team. I probably could have. And I I don't know. I just like I didn't want to have my whole life be lacrosse. I liked it. I loved it, but I I was recruited to play at the College of Mount St. Vincent, which again is a small school in the Bronx, on the other side of the Bronx, though. And going there, that was a nursing school mainly. And college, I didn't really need to go to college. I didn't even really, almost didn't want to go to college, to be honest. I didn't know much about what it was. It was more school. I didn't like school. I wasn't great at school the first 8 years of school. Then the last four were great. But now at that point, I'm like, I'm gonna run a building. I'm gonna be a super, I'm gonna be a resident manager. There's no sense in going to college. I don't need a college degree to do that. And the earlier I start, maybe the earlier I progress and da 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 da. And I remember like, I don't think I want to go to college. I was telling this to my parents in the car. My mom's like, you're going to college. Like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're going to college. You may think you want to be a firefighter. You may think you want to be run a building, and you don't need a degree to do any of those. You're still going to go to college. And I was like, ugh. I had no idea what I was turning, considering turning down. And I was like, well, if I got to go to college, I'm going to go close to home. I'm going to go where I'm wanted. So I was recruited. So I'm like, all right, let's go here. And went there, spent a weekend there. And I was like, you know what? This is cool. Let's do this. And if it's not good, we can always transfer. We can always just go somewhere else. Have 4 years, right? So I go to College of Mount St. Vincent. And my freshman year, it was okay. So freshman fall semester was a great time. There was like good times. It was crazy. And I also got my heart broken, which was like, ooh, we partied our ass off, heartbroken. It was like a whole 4 years in that first semester. Then second semester came, and I didn't love it. I was just like, okay, second semester is like there is the bars that we were going to all got shut down because the cops, da 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 da. And then lacrosse started. And I found myself as a freshman wanting to stay late at practice, wanting to go early to practice, wanting to work so hard because that was the level of work that's the level of effort that I put in the year before where we won the city championship. And now we're at this next level and we're taking it easy. We're going home because it's cold and we're doing like shortened practices. And I'm like, what is this? Like, are you kidding me? And I remember sitting there, I'm like, nah, man, I'm a freshman. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. And then I couldn't not say anything. I'm like, nah, 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 nah. I can't not say anything right now. Like we're going home again? What do you mean? What is this? Like, oh yeah, you guys done enough. Like, no, I didn't. It was insane. So that I'd gotten like the seniors together. I was like, yo, you guys can't be cool with this. Like the captains. I'm like, well, okay. If coach ends the practice here, then why can't we have a captain's practice the rest of the practice? And just like now we scrimmage and we do our thing and we get better because I don't want to lose. You guys are telling me how like we were 3-8 last year. I'm not okay with that. Like, what are we doing? And that was, I don't know, it was a pretty bold conversation for this young kid to have. And some people didn't like me, but I really didn't give a shit, to be honest. I really didn't because I was there to be better, and it's the level of effort that I matched in high school. I didn't want to have it go down when I went to college. So that went that way, whatever it went, it kind of like played itself out. And then my freshman year, I'm sorry, then my sophomore year came up, and I'm like, all right. I've seen some of the experiences that my other friends had. They went to Alabama, they went to Penn State, they went here, and they would talk about how good of a time it was. I'm like, wow. Then that's when like YouTube was coming around. You really start seeing these other colleges and what a big school experience really is. So I'm like, nah, man. I went in sophomore year. I remember it's like if things don't get better around here, both lacrosse and like nightlife, then I'm out of here because that's all I cared about. Like I was getting a degree to run a building. I was getting a business management degree. This is a piece of paper. This piece of paper is the same for me. For me, that was for me. Other people use the degree, take the degree, and go and da 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 with it. I learned things, and I had an amazing experience in college. But at the same time, I was like, eh. But sophomore year comes around, me and my buddy end up. Uh, I actually go to my roommate, and this is the first weekend of college. And now, remember, I told you about the bar that was open in the first beginning of school? That was Winners. It was right down the block. We didn't have to take a cab. We didn't have to do anything. We walked right to Winners, and that was the spot. Crazy. So now I asked my roommate, we're in the quad, drinking, having a good time. And I would say I'm like one beer in. And I'm like, yo, before I start like, really drinking, because I don't drink and drive at all. And I was like, yo, Matt, you want to take a ride? Like you want to go to, you want to see if Winners is open? Nah, nah, I'd rather stay here. I'm like, okay, cool. I asked my second roommate, who was an illegal roommate, who slept on the floor because it's a two-bedroom. Carl, you want to take a ride? He's like, nah, nah, I don't really like, nah, I want to stay here. Okay. And then I see this tall, lanky kid from Long Island who I was like, I was indifferent about him last year. I kind of we got like the beginning of the fall, I didn't like him. Second semester, I was like, all right, this guy's cool, but he's very much like alpha energy, very much like myself. So I'm like, all right, Jimmy, you want to take a ride, bro? Like, come on. Like, you want to go to this thing? And he's like, yeah, I'll take a ride. So he gets in the car, pull up on Winners, and doors open. Like, oh, perfect. And we walk in. I'm like, yo, what's going on, my man? How you doing? You guys gonna be open this year? He's like, oh, nah, like not yet, but like we're working on it. We're getting our license and things of that nature. What do you guys like, promoters? I look at Jimmy. I look at this guy. I'm like, yeah, why? What's up? And he's like, oh, well, I'm not open, but my boy across the street is open, so I could, probably hook you guys up with him. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's do that. I don't know what I was saying yes to. I didn't even know what a promoter was at all, to be very honest. And if I knew what it was, I probably would have said no. I probably would have definitely said like, nah, man, I'm not a promoter. Like, what are you talking about? I just, yeah, I'm a promoter. Wow, what's up? He brings us over to the other club right across the street, which was not there before. This was just opened up, just got their license. And this guy is like, oh, yeah, 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 let's do something this Thursday. We had 2 days to throw a party. We went back to school, told some of our friends, we were like, all right, we'll see. Some people will show up, some people won't show up, whatever. We get there that Thursday, and Thursday, that was the night in Mount St. Vincent. And I pre-gamed hard and I'm nervous as shit. And we're walking around and we're lighting candles and like I don't know what oh yeah, we show up and they're still hanging speakers in the ceiling. Like they have contractors there. And we're like 45 minutes out from the party starting when we told people to be there at 9, 10 o'clock, whatever it was. So we're going around cleaning up after the contractors. There's no drilling the fucking speakers up. And I'm like, I'm sticking my hand in with a lighter to light something. And as you see, it doesn't fit here. It didn't fit there. And I pushed because I was drunk, and the glass broke and it cut my hand. Now, not only am I nervous, not only am I drunk, I'm now bleeding before our first party that we're gonna throw that I've never done something like this before, ever. And like, okay, oh man, this is gonna be crazy. So, long story short, we thought nobody was gonna show up. The whole school shows up, and it was unbelievable. I and my partner Jimmy never paid for a drink the rest of college. And we were blessed to make deals with that bar and all the other bars in the Bronx to figure out how we can incorporate our people to their scene. And man, was it a blessing. But it was only a blessing. I don't want to say that. It was such a beautiful blessing because we were big fish in a little pond. Our school had 3,000 people total. So when we went out, it wasn't like, oh, those people are going here and we're going there. That was actually how it was when I was a freshman. Like the older kids would go out to this place where the younger kids couldn't get in. And I don't know what it was, but I think maybe the seniors were friends with us, so they wanted to come out with us, and then it kind of introduced them to like the new pool of dating, which was the freshman girls. So to me, I think that that mold of our freshman girls, um, our blend of grades help us all cumulatively go somewhere and helped us all have an amazing time together. So being that big fish that me and Jimmy got to be in the little pond of Mount St. Vincent was an unbelievable college experience. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. I wouldn't trade that for every weekend at Penn State or whatever whatever that looks like. I'm sure it's amazing. I'm sure it's awesome. But I'll tell you right now, they didn't have as much fun as us. Nah. Some average Joe, some little fish in a big pond didn't have as much fun as both me, Jimmy, my brother, all of our very close friends, all got to get hooked up, all got to get taken care of. Even our friends got to, like, even our extensions of friends got great times where we're all in the same room together. And that doesn't happen as a small fish in a big pond. You're going out with your two, three, four, five friends instead of like, yo, let's all collectively go here. And that to me was such a development of community, development of a really fun time. So just wanted to come on here, share a little bit about that, about Big Fish, Little Pond. I mean, maybe you guys have you know, a different opinion. Maybe you have an experience of a little fish making it in a big pond. Somebody going to New York City with hopes and dreams and making it in a big pond. And that is inspirational as well, I have to say, when I look at it in that manner. But even with that, then it turns in that little fish that makes it in the big pond ends up being a big fish. And then you realize that pond ain't so big because you were on the outside. You didn't know anybody. Now that you've ate and grew and put the time in, and ate and grew and put the time in, now you're a big fish amongst other big fish. Like Mark Wahlberg was nobody when he was in Massachusetts. He had to go out to Hollywood to start rapping, to start acting, to start doing this. He was a small fish in a big pond. He hustled and grinded, and now he is amongst the elite out there. He is amongst some of the most, little pond, little fish, big pond inspirational stories. But again, that got him to that big fish now. I don't know. Is it better to be a big fish in a little pond or to be a little fish in a big pond? I definitely prefer the latter. You niche yourself apart, you separate yourself and conquer a new land. Don't try to take over what somebody's already done. You're not gonna be successful at it. Well, you know what? I don't want to say that because I just disproved that by saying Mark Wahlberg right there, the whole story. If your vision is honorable and value driven, I don't care what land you conquer, whether it be New York City or whether it be the Bronx. The king's a king. King's a king. Takes a lot more work, a lot more connections, a lot more, I don't want to call it dirty work to be the king of New York, but some people have those aspirations to be the king of New York, and some people just have the aspirations of being the king of the Bronx. And I'm not saying I was the king of the Bronx. I'm just saying looking at things in different manners and different visions and different lights. I think it's unique. I think it's unique. The perspectives, the visions, and the missions that we take on to either be the David and take on the Goliath, or say, all right, well, I'd rather be a Goliath. And I guess the more I guess I'm looking at this in different ways, it looks like the easy way out, but it's kind of like real estate. To me, you don't go into New York City to try to buy a multifamily. You go to Staten Island and buy a multifamily and rent it out. Because, but again, is that a perspective thing? Is that a perspective thing? Because, I mean, not that, you can compare yourself, but like, not that I'm not comparing myself, but Trump, one of his biggest accomplishments was the massive development of the West Side Highway. I mean, the buildings of the real estate of the West Side shipping yards is what it was. So let's just say this is Manhattan, right? The Upper East Side right here is probably some of the probably was at the time the most prevalent zip code in all of Manhattan. You had the Central Park, you have Fifth Avenue, all of that, Park Avenue right here. Then you go west, you have Central Park West, because you have the park here, Central Park West, and then you go a couple avenues, the West End Avenue, and then right about here till about here of Manhattan, because now we got the Empire State Building here, we got Harlem and all this stuff up here. So right where this label is actually works out perfectly was the West Side shipping yards, where there was hookers, drugs, gangs, all kinds of things that would come in that way. That's where most of the city got their resources through the shipping ports. And as those shipping ports were either, let's call it, mm, shut down or they closed down, that area of land right on the west side was not not good. It didn't look good. It was horrible. And the only person to have the vision to collect a development group together and say, yo, guys, this is waterfront property in New York City. That right there is the Hudson River. It's always flowing. It's beautiful. Does nobody realize that this is waterfront property? And in doing so, he was the leader of the group. He collected everybody. He didn't have all the money, not at all, but he was the head person driving that deal. And he got it done. And he built some really amazing properties over there that as you drive by the west side now, they've recently turned it all to parks. And I would honestly say it's a very, very coveted location, very valuable real estate at this point. It's taken a little while, but you have to have the vision. You have to see what is there and say, we can do a lot more with what we got. It's pretty unbelievable that we got this. But if we get in now, we have the chance to develop this into something amazing. So, yeah, I want to pose the question to the listeners. Is it better to be a big fish in a little pond or to be a little fish in a big pond? What do you think? Let me know. I'd really appreciate some feedback. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the My Tribe podcast. And I'm super excited to bring on another guest that is coming up, Mr. Chris Hayes. It's my little cousin who went to college and he was struggling in college and ended up, I remember his dad was like, "Hey, can you talk to him?" Da 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 da. And he was struggling in a number of subjects. Oh, I suck at math. I suck at math. Like, okay, cool. What are you gonna do about it? And this is when I was in my, let's call it, life coaching era of my life, trying to see if that was for me. And let's just say there was a lot of limiting beliefs that were considered addressed. And this young man is now a graduate of college. And I wanna have him share a little bit of the story that we got to experience together. So that's gonna be the next episode that drops. Make sure you tune in and pay attention. Thank you, y'all. Again, don't forget this. Like, if somebody thinks a little differently than you, then a big fish, a little pond, big fish, big pond. Share this with them. Share this with them, and say, "Yeah, this is what I think. What do you think?" If you think somebody can benefit from this, and they're making a life decision, whether to go to a big company or to go to a startup, maybe they can benefit from a number of these perspectives here. Again, so blessed, so grateful for everyone that tunes in and listens. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you.